Good morning, students. This is Mr. Yetman's disembodied voice, and I hope that everyone is doing well today. Today we're going to go over the first part of section 8.6. Section 8.6 is possibly the most important section in the entire algebra book. It teaches you a skill about factoring trinomials, and it's something that you will need every single year of your math classes and maybe some of your science classes for the rest of your high school experience. So we're going to make sure that we learn it really, really well, and I'm going to break it up into 2 days. We'll do part of it today and we'll do part of it on Monday. So let's get started. So today we're looking at section 8.6, part 1. We're going to be factoring trinomials of the form x squared plus bx plus c. I'll explain what that means in just a little bit. But we're going to start by recalling what we did last week, where we learned how to do our double distribution, where we multiply two binomials. And we've talked about this earlier this week too. So remember that if you've got a binomial times another binomial, you have to distribute the 3 to both things inside the other parentheses and the x to both things inside the other parentheses. Our double distribution, which we also call FOIL. So x gets multiplied by both of those. X times x is x squared. X times 4 is 4x. So that was the x times both things there. Now this 3 needs to be multiplied by both things there. 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times 4 is 12. Now our last step is always to look for the like terms. We know the x terms are the two like terms. So we have x squared plus 7x plus 12. So there is our multiplied two binomials to get a trinomial. So what we're going to learn today is we're going to learn how to go backwards. What if we started with this and we wanted to go back to that? Now we learned how to do that a couple of days ago by factoring by grouping, but this is something that will work in a lot of other situations where grouping won't necessarily work. Actually, we're going to use grouping to get our answer, but this is where we factor trinomials. The grouping ones we saw were 4-term polynomials. I guess you could call those quadrinomials. But now we're going to factor trinomials. So when we see a problem like this, it's going to ask us to factor. And I'm just going to pretend I'm going to start with this. So I have x squared plus 7x plus 12. Now when the instructions are to factor, that means we want to end up with two binomials, a binomial times a binomial. We're going to go backwards from this into that. We're going to go from this back up to there. But the questions are, how do we know what goes in here? Well, today we're just going to look at problems where there isn't a leading coefficient. Sometimes we're going to have another number there, like 3 or 7 or 12, and that's going to make these problems a little bit harder. So today we're only going to look at the ones that have nothing there, or actually it's really just a 1. But all the problems we're doing today will just have a 1 there and not anything else. Now I want you to think about for a second if you can think of something, some way that the numbers 7, 12, and 3 and 4 are all linked to each other. So how do you think the numbers 3 and 4 are linked to the numbers 7 and 12? Well, if you think about it a little about it and sort of think, how can I combine 3 and 4 to get 7 and 12, you realize that this number here is the adding, the sum of 3 and 4, and that this number there is the multiplication, or as we like to call it, the product of 3 and 4. And so if we can see this pattern, that this is a sum and this is a product, that will help us go backwards. Now, sometimes to help us do this, we use the X method, and we're going to use something called the X method a lot on Monday, but I'm going to show you what that means. When I have a problem like this, I'm going to draw an X like this, and I'm going to put the multiplication, this number is going to go right here, and this number is going to go right there. And my goal here is to figure out what two numbers multiply to make 12 and add to make 7. What two numbers multiply to make 12 and add to make 7? Well, those numbers are obviously 3 and 4. So having made this X pattern, so these two numbers add to make 7, and these two numbers multiply to make 12. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring down this X squared from here, and I'm going to bring down this 12 from there. The 7x I'm going to break up. It's going to be 3x, and it's going to be 4x. So the 3 came here and the 4 came there, and they got the coefficient of x. So this may seem really confusing right now. It's kind of random, but watch what's going to happen. Again, let me recap what I did. I brought this x squared and just wrote it there. I brought this 12 and just wrote it there. And this is the same thing that we're going to do on Monday. I made my x, and I found the two numbers that multiply to make 12 and add to make 7. And I wrote one of them there, and I wrote the other one there with an x in front of it. Now I have a factoring by grouping problem. Whoa, I just changed this into a problem that we already know how to do. I'm going to group that, and I'm going to group that. So what comes out of x squared and 3x? What common thing can we factor out there? We can factor out an x, and when we do, we have x plus 3 left. What can come out of both 4x and 12? What can come out of both a 4x and a 12? Looks like we can take a 4 out, and then we'll have x plus 3 left. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Notice that those are both x plus 3's, so if I take the x plus 3 out to the front, I have x plus 4 left behind, and there is my factoring. So this is sort of the long way to do it. If you get good at this and you see that there's a 1 here, you can do it this way. You can think, what multiplies to make 12 and adds to make 7? And the answer is, 3. You can put a 3 there and a 4 there, and just say x plus both of those, and that's the same thing we got there. Warning, you can do that, but that only works if there's a 1 there. And so on Monday's problems, this quick system isn't going to work, but the long system will still work. So let's do another example. Let's say that I have, and I'm asking you to factor x squared minus 6x plus 5. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the x method. Now you got to be careful here. I want numbers that multiply to make 5 and add to make -6. So I want numbers that multiply to make -5 and add to make -6. Well, one way that I could do that, actually the only way that I can do that, I think what multiplies to make 5, the only things that multiply to make 5 are 1 and 5, but 1 plus 5 isn't 6. But don't forget that -1 times -5 also equals 5. And -1 plus -5 is -6. So those are my answers. I'm going to put a -1 there, and I'm going to put a -5 there. So I've completed my x. Remember, it multiplies to make this and adds to make that. So now I'm going to do my system. I bring the x squared down there, and I bring the 5 right there. Then I write minus 1x and minus 5x. And now I'm going to factor by grouping. When I look at this, I see an x in both of those, so I know I can bring an x out to the front. I see a 5 in both of those, but because there's a minus here, I'm going to pull a minus 5 out, which leaves an x there. And 5 divided by minus 5 is negative 1. So I took that 5 and I factored out a negative 5, which left a negative 1. Both of these have a negative 1 in them. I can pull out a negative 1 to the front, and that leaves x minus 5 as my other one, and there is my answer. Now I could have done this the fast way, directly from here. I could have done x minus 1 and x minus 5 right from once I had this part. But that only works because we don't have a leading coefficient there. So I could have gone directly to that. So last example, let's factor x squared minus x minus 20. My goal is to end up with two binomials that will, if I double distribute, like here, if I foiled this out or doubly distributed, I would have ended up with that. So here, I'm going to make my x. I'm going to say what multiplies to make negative 20 and adds to make negative 1. Well, multiplying is going to be, multiply and make 20 is 4 times 5, but it has to be negative 20, so one of them has to be negative. So it could be negative 4 and positive 5, but if you add negative 4 and positive 5, you get positive 1, and I want to get a negative 1. So it's got to be positive 4 and negative 5. So I can put a positive 4 there and a negative 5 there. So bringing this down, I get x squared plus 4x minus 5x minus 20. So I brought down the minus 20. I know that's going to be 4x. I know that's going to be 5x. I can group. I see I can bring an x out of there, which is x plus 4. I can take a negative 5 out of there, which also leaves an x plus 4. I can take an x plus 4 out to the front, and that leaves an x minus 5. So there's my answer. Now I could have also used the shortcut, and that would have been saying it's going to be x and x, and they're the numbers that multiply to make negative 20, but add to make negative 1. So I could put a plus 4 and a minus 5 there. So if you want to do today's homework like that, that's fine. But on Monday, we're going to see this x a lot, and we're going to have to use it because it's very difficult to do the problems without using the x. So if you have questions, feel free to email me. You can also look online if you search for factoring trinomials, you can probably find some Khan Academy videos that will tell you how to do that. We'll have a Zoom meeting tomorrow at 1, I think I said 1:30 p.m. It's on the website. Please check the website every single day. Good luck. And if also there is an Alex assignment about this, and there is an Alex quiz tomorrow between 9 and 3. You need to take your Alex quiz. So have a great day, and I will see you soon.